Hello and welcome back to the show. So today we are really excited because we have a guest who is going to be talking all about how to be an investor agent, which is something really important, I think, because a lot of real estate agents got into real estate to build wealth, but really what they're doing is building an income, and being an investor agent will help you build wealth. So just kind of introduce my guest first. My guest today is the founder of Agent Investor, Tom Cafarella. Tom has flipped over 1,200 houses and owns a 300 unit and up rental portfolio as an investor. And on the agent side, he also has a 350 agent brokerage teaching all of those agents how to invest in real estate. So I want to bring on Tom as my guest today. And I just want to say, Tom, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited to kind of dig into this and kind of get your background and your story. So obviously you're out there posting content on social media, hosting podcasts, running, big Facebook groups, and a lot of people might already know who you are. But for those who might not know your background, or who might not know kind of like how you got started in real estate and how you got to this point, would you mind kind of just sharing your story a little bit here and kind of telling us about how you got here?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, for me, really, it all started, when I was a kid, and growing up, my parents they never fought about anything except for money. And so growing up, like we almost lost our house a couple times. My father was always in and out of work, and so literally at a very young age, 8, 9, 10 years old, I remember asking my parents and other people basically, like, how do I avoid this, when I get older? Because that was like I had a really good childhood, but that was the only stress mentally that I had at that age. And everybody told me the same thing, which I'm sure is something that your entire audience has been told, which is do good in school, get a good job, that'll fix everything. So even though I didn't love school, that's what I did. I did really well in school, went to college, and during college, when I was in college, I was pre-med. And to pay for college and my, incidentals, I was a pizza delivery boy. And one thing I loved about that job, driving from house to house delivering pizzas, is that I got to listen to whatever I wanted in my car. And somebody had recommended listening to the audiobook. And in this case, it was an audio cassette in 2003, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And by the time I got done listening to that book, my whole mindset changed from feeling like I was working my entire life for something that wasn't exactly what I wanted. Because at the end of the day, I realized at that point, I mean, looking back, that I was an entrepreneur and not, an employee. So after I listened to that audio cassette, I went home. I told my father that I didn't want to be pre-med anymore. I wanted to get a business degree. I double majored, got a business degree, became an accountant for the first couple of years of my career, and still was trying to like live that, go to school, get a good job. But in the back of my mind, I was listening to every podcast, audiobook, going to shows, going to events and stuff like that about real estate. And so finally I said, you know what, as long as I have a W-2 job, I might as well get my real estate license. So I got my real estate license, started, showing homes, started loving it, started doing pretty decent part-time selling homes, for the first couple of years, probably selling like 5, 6, 7 houses a year part-time. And that was all free money for me, extra money that I didn't need, that I could save, all along that time, being like, hey, I really want to be a real estate investor. Wanted to own my own business. And I got really fortunate in December of 2007, when the economy started to change and companies started to lay off kind of their lower tier kind of employees. And I remember I got called into my HR office, and the person said to me, they said, hey, Tom, are you in real estate? And at that moment, like, I completely froze up because I like didn't know what to say, didn't know what to do, didn't know what the right thing was. And long story short, they just said, hey, you're probably better off, if that's what you're passionate about, why not just do real estate? So I remember kind of like driving home from, getting laid off, feeling like a failure, and just kind of thinking in my head, like, is my life going to repeat, what my dad kind of went through. And I was feeling really bad about myself. The whole drive home, I was thinking, hey, I'm going to go out. I'm going to have to get another job tomorrow. And I woke up the next day and I was, I think, either 25 or 26 at the time. And I remember waking up being like, if I'm going to do this, I need to do this now. So and part of me was like, okay, you're doing okay selling real estate part time. Well, what if you sell it full time? You'll do really well. And that's where I found out kind of the hard lesson that a lot of real estate agents find out the hard way, which is that it's really hard to sell a lot of real estate like on a moment's notice. And so, yes, I did okay as a part-time agent selling 5, 6, 7 houses. Maybe I was making 25 to 40 grand part-time. But I realized once I started going full-time, I didn't have all of these extra clients. Like I was working the clients I had part-time. And so I did put in more effort to being an agent and I did start to sell more houses, but I got on what, all real estate agents, a lot of real estate agents are on, which is what they call the real estate roller coaster. And, my income was going up and down and up and down. One month I'd have 4 closings and I'd be like, geez, I'm going to sell, 40 houses this year. And then, the next month I'd have none. The next month I'd have none. The next month I'd have one. The next month I'd have five. And depending on, literally the day of the week and the month that you asked me, it went from I need to get a job again to I'm going to be like a top producing agent. So again, all along that whole course, thinking back to that Rich Dad Poor Dad book of being a real estate investor, but never having done anything. And I teach real estate agents to invest in real estate. And most real estate agents know that they should invest in real estate. They want to invest in real estate, but they don't take action. And for me, it wasn't until I got a mentor in 2009. So 6 years after I did 6 years after I read Rich Dad Poor Dad or listened to it, that I actually did my first real estate investing deal, which was a wholesale deal that I made $115,000 on. That it changed my whole mentality from wanting to be like an agent first, maybe an investor second, to being an investor first and an agent second. And all of the stuff that you did, and thank you for talking about some of the highlights of what I've done. All of that stuff, it helped propel me from just being, an agent on the real estate roller coaster to now being, technically financially free through real estate investing.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So I think that's a story I think a lot of agents can resonate with, mostly because, like you said, when they first got into real estate, they probably were really, really excited, or maybe they started out part time as well, and they were looking to go into it full time, and they had these really high expectations. But like you said, there's they call it the real estate roller coaster, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes you're going to do well on some months, sometimes you're not going to do so well, and the commission checks are not. I even say that commission checks are less reliable than like a paycheck from a job, because you
Yeah.
never know if it's going to be coming, and how much is going to be coming in every month. So maybe kind of touch on that a little bit and kind of your experience there. Was that one of the key reasons why, you decided to, pursue more of being an investor and overall a real estate entrepreneur? Was that you kind of realized that, what people paint the picture of, the real estate agent business and the reality of it,
Yeah.
it's just a lot different than I think what a lot of people think.
It's totally different. And like you mentioned, I have a real estate brokerage. I have 350 agents. We bring in, a couple new agents every single week. And well, I always ask the question, why'd you get into real estate? And the answers to those questions show that what they thought real estate was, it's so far different. And the number one reason that people get into real estate is for freedom. And so that's one thing that's kind of a big misconception, is that I'm going to get into real estate, I'm going to have all this freedom. And then, yeah, in the beginning, when you don't have any clients, you've got all the freedom, right? You can do what you want when you want. But then once you start to get busy and you're selling 10 plus houses a year, you realize, it's a Friday night at 6 o'clock and your client texts you, I want to see a house tomorrow at 10 a.m. You're jumping, you're going. And so what most real estate agents learn the hard way is there's actually less freedom being a real estate agent than there is being an employee, right? There's no vacations, there's no time off. When you do take time off, you're not making money. But then the second thing that they learn the hard way is just that inconsistency of income. And it's one thing, anybody who's a business owner, who's a real estate agent, you have that entrepreneurial mindset. Maybe you're a little bit more of a risk taker than the average person. It's another thing to not have a commission come in for 90 days. And one thing that I've talked a lot about with agents in my brokerage and outside of my brokerage in the last few years is we've been in this environment where you may have been doing the right things. Like you may have been working your sphere of influence. You might be meeting with people every single week. But in the last few years, with the lack of inventory that we've had, there are so many agents that have ready, willing, and able buyers that haven't turned into money for the agent or have turned into money for the agent a year later, 18 months later, 9 months later. And that's really like, that is not why agents got into real estate. And I know that everything I just said probably sounds like I'm anti-sales or anti being a real estate agent. I am not at all. I'm a huge advocate of it, but I'm an advocate of that agent investor model that, I didn't necessarily create, but that I promote, of doing both. And there's no reason why agents can't do both. It's just a matter of getting educated.
Yep, absolutely. And I think a lot of agents, they want to do both, right? When they get
Yep.
into real estate, when you speak to, new agents who just got their real estate license out of real estate school, one of their big goals is definitely, I want to be a top producer and I also want to be a real estate investor. But they always follow that with eventually.
Hmm.
I think there's something in there where it shows that a lot of people think they have to be a successful agent first before they become an investor. What's your take on that? Do you think somebody can kind of do both paths at once, or one or the other?
It's the biggest misconception that I talk about it every single day. I don't want to talk about it every single day, but I talk about it every single day because it's the biggest misconception. I'm having an event coming up April 12th and April 13th, and it's a free event for real estate agents. And the biggest reason I get why people won't come is I'm not ready to invest yet. And the reason that they think they're not ready yet is because they haven't gotten educated. They haven't built that foundation. It's the misconception, again, going back to the misconception that agents think they're going to get a lot of freedom being an agent. They also have these misconceptions about investing. And I could, give you the laundry list of reasons. I don't have money. I don't have time. I don't know what I'm doing. And it all boils down to a lack of education. Not that they should have been educated. They don't get educated by brokerages. They don't get educated really by anybody, but it's just a mindset thing, that it's just so interesting because again, agents, when they get into real estate, they think they're going to have all this freedom. It's false. So they believe that false thing. They also believe this false thing that I need to be ready, I need time, etc. When most real estate agents don't need time. And in fact, let me just give you a simple example of something that just happened within my brokerage, within my inner circle coaching program, in the last few months, to giving an example of this illustration. So I have a team, a husband and wife team at my brokerage. They're in the inner circle program, and they went on a listing appointment. They went on the listing appointment. It was their friend's mom. Their friend's mom passed away. House needed a ton of work. They went out there, they explained to them like what would be needed to get the house in, show ready condition to get them the top dollar, right? Because really that's what most agents think, that everybody wants the top dollar. And after talking to their friend, they were just like, yeah, but I I can't do this right now. Like my mom just passed away. I don't have the money, I don't have the patience. Like I just want to sell it as is. So most agents would then say, okay, great. Let me toss it on the market, list it as, a cash sale, where these people, because they're in my inner circle and they got educated, they brought the deal to me. They said, Tom, do you want to partner on this fix and flip with me? We have this deal that should be a good deal. We analyzed it, looked at it. We put up the money. We did the construction, split it with them 50-50. And to make a long story short, it turned out to be a crazy big profit. It was a $300,000 profit that we split 50-50. Now, you know, caveat in there, that is not a normal profit, but I'm only saying it to illustrate the point that these agents in my company, in my inner circle coaching program, all they needed to do was to be aware that there was this investment opportunity and to try to get a deal done. And they didn't need anything else. They didn't need money. They didn't need construction expertise. And I could give you again, like 10 examples of all different ways that agents come across deals by accident without even trying. And they're usually just tripping over, gold coins because they don't realize that they can actually do anything with them. So I always say to people, like, don't worry about the fact that you don't think you're ready yet. Maybe you're not ready to do anything today, but you're ready to get educated today. And that's why, like, I have the podcast, I have the Facebook group. Commit to getting educated. And my biggest kind of gripe, if I had to kind of like list it with agents about investing, is that they will go to training after training after training in their office to learn how to fill out a lead paint form, to fill out how to do a buyer agency agreement, but they won't do the same thing for investing. And they also think that you can go to like a 1-day seminar or listen to one thing and you should be armed with the knowledge to invest. Where if a friend of theirs said, hey, after I finish my licensing courses, I should be able to sell 20 houses a year, they'd laugh at that, right? But they at the same time, they believe the same thing when it comes to investing. And it really is like an education thing. The more you learn, the more you earn. And it's just making that commitment to getting educated. It's that's the first step.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it just all boils down to the information and the knowledge, right? So
Yeah.
it's very similar to being a great sales agent. If you don't get the knowledge, if you don't know what you're doing, then it's hard to actually go out there and apply these things because you don't even know what you're trying to apply.
No.
So, yeah. So I think for agents, a big part of that also is the fear of not having the financing ready, right? Not having the money. They're 1099 employee or independent contractors. They're not employees. They mostly deal with traditional financing on the FHA, VA if they're working with a veteran home buyers. They're mostly working with traditional loan products, and so they don't necessarily think they can actually get the financing to do a lot of investment deals. So in your your perspective for a real estate agent, what are some things they should be learning,
Mhm.
and what are some things they might not know about in terms of financing their real estate properties, especially kind of coming from the position of a real estate agent that might be actually beneficial to them that somebody else might not have the opportunity to do so.
Yeah, exactly. So when I look at investing, I look at three components. You have to be able to find good deals, you have to be able to fund good deals, and you have to be able to manage the construction element of it. Um, so when I look at that and I say, well, how do agents fit into that? It's a no-brainer that the finding the deals is something that all agents can do. Now, some agents can also find the money, can get the funding, can do the construction. It depends on, what your skill set is. But most agents are kind of uniquely qualified to be out there to find deals, or implement methods that are going to help them find deals. So again, going back to that example where we split that profit 50-50 with somebody on my team, all they had to do was be aware of that deal. But there's many others. I just had an opportunity for another person that's in our inner circle program. They found an apartment deal, an 80 unit deal in the greater Boston area. They brought it to us and said, hey, do you want to work with me on this? And I know when somebody does that, that means that they need money, right? Not that I have all the money in the world, I don't, but I'm going to look at every opportunity that is going to come across my plate. And maybe I have the money, or maybe I can raise the money and we can put a deal together and work on a deal together. So this agent that I'm talking about found this deal. We love this deal. And now they're going to be part owner of this 80 unit apartment complex. And they actually happen to have the construction expertise too. So they're going to help manage that project. So on my side of the table, I had the cash, the ability to get the funding, and they had the ability to find a deal to manage the project. So we combine, forces there, and it's a win-win. I think people don't understand that. They think that if somebody has money, that they're automatically going to do all these things themselves. Whereas, like in this example with the apartment deal, it's easier for me to just either put up my money or help, put the money together. I didn't have to find the deal. I don't have to manage the construction. It's a pretty good deal. So the other thing that agents have the ability to do if they get educated and learn this stuff is raise money. And all agents have a sphere of influence, people that know, like, and trust them. And a lot of people in their sphere have capital. I'm not saying all of them do, they don't. but they have people in their sphere that have capital, that want to invest in real estate, that don't want to do this heavy lifting. And again, that's another area where agents can kind of fit in, um, if they don't have the money themselves. And just to back up for a second, when people tell me that you need money to start, is basically like telling me that my life is a lie, because I had no money to start. I had no money. I had to learn these strategies. Is it easier if you have money? Is it easier if you have construction expertise? Yeah, it is, right? Because you already have one of those three skills. But everybody starts at a certain point, and they have to learn these different skills. And like I said, where agents really fit in with this is that agents get deals brought to them by accident sometimes. You're in your office meeting and somebody says, this happened to me, when I was at one of the big name brokerages before I started my own brokerage. I'm sitting in an office meeting. Someone goes, I got this beat up property. I don't even want to list it. It's so low priced and it's going to be a pain and nobody's going to want it. And I came in and I bought it. And that agent wasn't even thinking like, hey, I could somehow benefit from an investing type of deal. All they were thinking about was, this is going to hurt my, listing sale price, average, and it's going to sit on the market and things like that. So it's just, like I said, it just keeps going back to number one, saying, I want the life that I know investing can help me get. Okay. And if you don't, then this, all this stuff doesn't make sense. But if you do know that investing can be the vehicle to help you get there, the second component is to say, hey, I don't even know if I'm ready or not, but I need to get this foundational information to understand how I might invest, whether I can invest, whether I want to invest. And it just keeps going back and back to that getting educated.
Yeah, absolutely. So something I definitely took out of that was agents are really positioned in a really well positioned to bring deals to investors,
Mhm.
to financiers, to be partners in some of these deals, or at least just to kind of see how real estate investment deals or fix and flips are actually being done, and actually get that firsthand education, because they're coming across deals all the time, just in their business, generating leads. And a lot of them, they're not maybe wanting to monetize on them, or they don't want to list it, or the seller themselves don't necessarily see it being a something listed on the MLS. And now there's a way to actually monetize these leads by partnering with investors, like yourself or other investor agents, kind of in their network as well.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah. So in terms of that, where do you think agents should be networking with other investors and finding some of these partners to maybe bring these deals to? Because I think a lot of times agents will come across these deals, but because they haven't even been thinking about it, or they haven't been preparing for this, they've just kind of tossed them aside, or just told them, I don't want to take this listing, or just kind of you know, not follow up with those kind of leads. But now that they're listening to this, where do you think an agent should be looking for these types of opportunities on the other side of that, which is looking for other investors, or people that could potentially raise money, or people that could potentially partner with them on these deals?
Yeah. So, well, there's a few kind of different strategies that people can implement. One of them is partnering, and that may or may not make sense. The other one is to do a wholesale deal or an assignment deal where they just assign a contract. And another one can just be that you bring it to an investor, you get the full commission up front, and then you get the listing on the back end. That can basically triple the amount that an agent would make on a listing, because they're getting three sides of a transaction rather than one. So those are kind of the methods. But then finding the investors, that's very easy in this market. It really doesn't matter what market you're in right now. You have more cash buyers, like way more cash buyers than there are potential deals. And I could give, a bunch of different strategies in order to find cash buyers. I mean, you could go as simple as, type "we buy houses in your city" and just go through all the people that are paying for Google pay-per-click and stuff like that. You can go to auctions, right? Somebody who's showing up with a non-refundable deposit, you better believe that that's an investor. You can ask around. You can post those deals, get permission to post those deals in different Facebook groups. And even if you don't have a deal, you can just go into a local Facebook group, an investor Facebook group, and say, hey, I've got, off-market deals, looking for investors, put your email below, to be on my email list. And what people will see if they start to do any of these things is you're going to have investors kind of like calling you off the wall. So the market that we're in, as we're talking right now, is a market where finding that deal is the hard part, finding the investor is the easy part. In terms of partnering, like myself, like if a person's in New England and they're in my inner circle program, we will partner with them. So of course, like that doesn't cover all of your listeners, but if you're outside of New England, what I would recommend doing first is doing the stuff to find those cash buyers, building the relationship with them, and then you're going to learn a lot. I mean, you're an agent, you have clients, you learn a lot about who you like, who you don't like, who you think you could work with, and it could potentially lead to a partnership opportunity. Or maybe you just decide, hey, I'm going to bring a deal to these investors, get a commission up front, a listing on the back end, or a sign or wholesale a deal. And then at some point, maybe you'll be ready to do a deal on your own. I mean, you do enough of these deals. We talked about the deal that I split with the couple in my company, the 150,000. You get $150,000. Wow, now you're in a position to do one of these deals on your own. And maybe you don't have the construction expertise yet, so maybe you don't do this crazy rehab, but maybe you come across a condo or a townhouse or something that can be a light renovation, and that's the first one that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just about kind of getting out there, networking with people. And it's really, there's investors will start reaching out to you, like you said, if you're an agent that can
Oh,
actually bring them deals because they're
oh
always
yeah.
looking for deals.
Oh yeah. I mean, working with investors is kind of a cheat code to getting a bunch more transactions. And we've talked, a lot about like quick turn deals, like signing and wholesaling and stuff like that. But then, the ultimate is to get into the long-term buy and hold and start to holding some of these things. And I put together a formula, like a 3-year formula in my Facebook group about basically how to become a millionaire in 3 years if you're an agent. That isn't an outlandish, like requires you to work 100 extra hours a week, but essentially the premise of it is that do a couple of these quick turn deals, and every time you get a chunk of money, hold on to something. And then over the course of time, getting back to like the freedom and stuff that agents want, that's where you're going to get the freedom. Like being an agent, it's a transactional business. So is the quick turn stuff. So the quick turn stuff is going to make you big chunks of money, whether you're flipping or signing or whatever. But really what you end up wanting long term, which is, what I learned in the Robert Kiyosaki book, is you want to be holding assets. So those assets rise in value, the rents rise every single month, your debt gets paid down. And so literally, as everybody says, like you're making money in your sleep, and you literally are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the big, I wouldn't say like misconceptions, but I think a lot of new investors, not just agent investors, but just new investors in general, they think investing and they think, flipping, right?
Yep.
But if you really think about it, and I'm not knocking, flipping houses, but when you're flipping houses, it's still a transactional business. You're still making money on the completion of a transaction. You're trading your time for
Yep.
money. So you're still in that S column if you're looking at the cash flow quadrant from Rich Dad Poor Dad. So, in your take, and what you just mentioned is basically agents need to try to get into that I column, that investor column
Hmm.
of that quadrant so that they can actually start holding properties and, buying more rentals.
Hmm.
So is that kind of, what your take on that is as well? And do you think, agents should maybe focus a little bit less of their time on, flipping, especially if they're doing really well on the transaction side, and maybe just take that money and just go straight into buying rentals?
So it really depends on the person's individual plan. And that's why some of the stuff, like for people that are listening, it becomes challenging because when we work with people, we do a 5-step process. And the first step is figuring out where you're at. Where are you at financially? How much time do you have? What experience do you have? Second thing is, where do you want to be 5 to 10 years from now? The third thing is, what type of investing vehicle do you need to get there? So like those first 3 steps, until I know the answer to those questions, I can't answer the question because I don't know. I don't know somebody's individual situation, how old they are, when they want to retire. Do you ever want to retire? So until you know that kind of stuff, I will never give kind of like blanket, statements. I will say that if someone somehow has the capacity to buy a bunch of rentals every single year and hold and doesn't need to make quick hit income, that's better. But that's usually not the reality, because in the beginning, most people don't have all this cash to then just buy rentals. So they need to do some quick turn stuff to kind of build that war chest up. And so it also depends on how successful the agent is, right? Like if somebody's selling 50 houses a year and saving 200K a year, that's a very different person, a different situation than somebody who's selling 10 houses a year that's just paying their bills. Someone who's selling 10 houses a year and just paying their bills, there's no savings. So they might need to do quick hit deals to save money to buy rentals. So it really depends. And it just goes back to the whole premise of like getting educated and just having an open mind and going, okay, I'm not ready maybe to invest today, but I'm going to commit to learning. And podcasting, obviously, you're releasing a podcast right now, people are listening to it. It's one of the easiest ways to get educated for free. Whether they're listening to your podcast, my podcast, the Agent Investor podcast, or any podcast, you're an agent, you're in the car all the time, right? What better way to get educated about any topic than finding an expert on iTunes or Spotify or whatever platform you're looking at, and listening to that person for free in your car or while you're doing your laundry. And there's no reason why, especially as agents, you can't do maybe an hour of that a day. So when somebody tells me they're not ready to invest it, or whatever, it's just like, you absolutely can do an hour of podcasting a day. There is no way, there is almost no human that can't do an hour of podcasting a day. And that would be like the bare minimum kind of first step. So any listeners that kind of think that, what I brought to the table so far is something they want to learn more about, definitely check out the Agent Investor podcast. And again, there's no excuse. You can tell me I can't make it to an in-person event. You can tell me I can't pay for a course, but you can't tell me that you can't download an episode on iTunes and listen to it while you're driving to an appointment.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the coolest things I think today is just the accessible nature of all this information. And, like you said, audiobooks, podcasts, just use that drive time, right? If you're working out, if you're going out for a run, use that time to also educate yourself. And that way you can actually stack time and
Yes.
actually get more out of your day. So that eliminates the excuse of, I don't have enough time either.
Yep. Yeah, it's just one of those, like, I don't know if you call them like millionaire habits, but
Yeah.
it's one of those things that like everybody who's super successful is always trying to get more information and get more educated. And back in the day, like when I was first starting in 2003, you couldn't do that. Like you had to go in person, you had to pay. Today, the information is readily available. It's easy. So, it's just like you mentioning, it's just crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think another thing I think a lot of agents will maybe have concerns on in terms of being an investor themselves, and I think this is something that you hear across the board, is I don't think it's not like a real objection, but it's a real concern for a lot of agents, and that
Mhm.
is if they work with a lot of investors you know, as their agent, they
Mhm.
don't necessarily see how, they're able to, I guess, not compete with them when it comes to looking for deals.
Mhm.
So in your case, what are some things that, you've kind of seen on the market or you've seen, your agents do that, where they're able to work with clients, but also still be able to kind of get themselves the good deals as well on the market?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, there's a lot of different ways I would answer that question. And by the way, that is a legitimate thing. There are some clients out there that will say, well, if you're buying all these deals, then what am I going to be left with? That is not a made up thing. I would say in general, that's not the whole thrust. That's not like most people, but you're always going to have a client here or a client there that doesn't like something that you're doing, whatever it is. But I think if you're shouting from the rooftops that you're an investor, you buy deals, you help people buy deals, and you're providing, like, again, you have a podcast, I have a podcast. When you're providing content, people look at you as an expert. And I think the net of that is always going to be positive. It's not going to be negative. Now, again, yes, someone is going to tell you, hey, Kobe, I know you're a big investor. Like, why would I work with you? You're going to steal all my deals. So there is going to be that person, but on the aggregate, it's going to be a net positive. But that would be the first way I would answer it. But the second thing is the reality is that most investors aren't buying 100 houses a year. They're buying 1 or 2 houses a year. Same thing with agents, right? Yes, there's going to be, outliers there that buy a ton, but most people are buying one here, one there. So the reality is that there aren't, enough. There are you're not going to buy enough to be real competition for them. And again, if you're doing a good job and you know what you're doing and you can help them. And then the other component of it is if you're a deal finder, again, you're not going to buy every deal. You're just not. Same thing with me. I buy a ton of properties every year, but I still have deals that I give to other people because I can't buy this one or it doesn't fit my criteria for whatever reason. It's too far for me, or it's the property, and my property tastes have even changed. So I used to buy a lot of small multifamily. Now I'm doing apartments. Well, guess what? Now all the small multifamily that come across my plate, like I don't even look at it anymore for myself. So I think if you're in it and you're doing it and you're providing net value to people, overall, it's going to be very positive.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think, a lot of investors will even see the on the opposite side of the spectrum, which is, oh, you're an investor as well. I think that's going to be, great to work with you because you're also doing this in the market. So you should know more than all the other agents. So it can actually bring an agent more business by being an investor themselves.
I've seen agents go from working with, just retail clients to shifting their entire business to investing because working with investor clients, because once they kind of are the go-to person, believe it or not, most agents aren't educated at all on investing. So when an investor is kind of shopping around going, what agent should I work with? You're going to really stand out. Like it shouldn't be so niche that it's like, wow, it's hard to find an agent that's investor friendly. But the reality is it is. And I even remember when I started and I didn't have my license yet, I remember reading in like a Kiyosaki book or, a book like that, like you got to find a good agent that understands investing. And I remember asking very, rudimentary questions about investing to agents. And most of them, I knew more at 2024 than these agents who had sold real estate for 15 years, and a lot of those agents don't even want to deal with investors. So again, there's just we've talked about a lot of different ways to make money as an agent investor, and you don't want to like run out and try to do all these 10 things at once. Again, I think it starts with like getting that base of knowledge to kind of start plotting out, like go through, our 5-step process and figuring out like, okay, where am I? How do I want investing to change my life? How does it fit into my real estate business? And that's where like having a good mentor or a coach matters because they can say, okay, I'm looking at your situation. I see where you want to go. Let me give you some, pointers there. And we do some of that stuff, completely for free through the podcast. And then I have the 11,000 agent investor Facebook group that people can go to agentinvestor.com. And I'll do free training every single Tuesday at 11 o'clock and answer questions within that group. So that's just like you want to compile, in the beginning, free resources that you can utilize to help you kind of like move from point A to point B.
Yep, absolutely. And just, right on the dot there, for anybody listening to this, right, Tom, if they want to check out more of your content, they want to check out, maybe follow you on social media. So aside from the Agent Investor podcast, which everybody should be checking out after listening to this, and the Agent Investor Facebook group, what are some other ways people can follow you on social media, maybe kind of check out your content or even, potentially look at some of the, trainings and inner circle programs that you offer?
Yeah, I think I would say the best place to start is the Agent Investor Facebook group. And that's agentinvestor.com. I know you already mentioned it, but the reason I'm saying that is because once people get into that group, you're going to see postings about the podcast, postings about training. And so once you get into that group, you're going to be able to see kind of everything that we do. And again, that stuff is all free. And then from there, you can get more involved if you want to. You can come to our free events. You'll be able to see me posting my own, Facebook page, and you can friend me or send me a message on Facebook so you can get more active. But everything, all of the resources are kind of like in that Facebook group.
Awesome. All right, we'll leave the links down below. Make sure everybody and listening to this can check that out and be a part of it. But other than that, Tom, is there any last tips, last thoughts you want to kind of leave with us today?
Yeah, I mean, my big thing really is just make a decision whether or not you want to invest in real estate. If the answer is no, that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with making that acknowledgement that you don't want to invest in real estate. But if the answer is yes, do not put off starting of getting educated. You can give me all the reasons in the world why you can't do a deal. Fine, I'll accept that. But if you are serious about investing in real estate, start with that educational process. Go into it with an open mindset and just see where it takes you.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks again, Tom, for being on the show. You guys listening to this, make sure to go check out the Agent Investor podcast, start getting educated, start making that decision. But other than that, I want to thank you again for tuning in. And I'll see you guys on the next show. Take care.